This episode is brought to you by Verizon. Get a Verizon Business Unlimited plan from the network businesses rely on. Hey, Monica, with 5G Ultra Wideband in many more cities, you get up to 10 times the speed at no extra cost.
Hello, downloads in no time.
Plus, unlimited premium data and hotspot data to keep the signal flowing and your teams going. Come in or book an appointment with a Verizon business expert to find the right plan for your team. 5G Ultra Wideband available in over 1,700 cities with Business Unlimited Pro 2.0 smartphone plan. Speed comparison is to median Verizon 4G LTE speeds. Download speeds may vary depending upon network and coverage conditions and content optimization for 5G Ultra Wideband.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.
And here we are. This is Blunt Business on CannabisRadio.com. Thank you for listening to the show, finding as you do, subscribing to it, wherever you find podcasts. Really glad to have you join us. My next guest has extensive experience helping scores of clients, from individual entrepreneurs to publicly traded companies, navigating complex cannabis disputes and successful business strategy. She is a partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice of Holland Hart, based in Denver, Colorado. And she joins us now, Rachel Gillette. Thank you for joining us here, Rachel.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
My pleasure. And we did have you on Cannabis Radio before, and we interviewed you and I together on the Grassroots Marketing Series. And now, initially, we talked to you when you were joining the firm, being one of the first lawyers in the country to dedicate your practice to cannabis. So I was October 2019, if I'm correct, and a lot has happened since then. But here we are. We talked about you initially coming into the space, but now let's really face some of the obstacles and some of the things that have happened since we last spoke that are still very point of mind. Now, here's one thing I want to ask you about first. You talked with MJBiz recently, and you mentioned that you were, quote, a little offended by the kind of horse trading, you said, that resulted in the safe banking measure coming out of the defense spending bill. As we know, it's the National Defense Authorization Act that Congress is trying to go ahead and incorporate the safe banking. Obviously, you always do this, what they call, those political terms, pork bill spending, and, always trying to insert bills into bills and having it be 1,000 pages so nobody gets a chance to read it. And you only have, a day to go ahead and review and vote. That's how it works in Washington, D.C. Now, they paraphrased you saying that cash control is one of the biggest issues your clients deal with. And it seems as if everyone would be better served, the federal government included, if state legal marijuana businesses could access traditional financial services. The current situation, quote, creates this tremendous safety issue for a multi-billion-dollar industry, end quote. So in the time you've spent now at Holland Hart working the cannabis part of the practice, what are some of the most common issues that your team has had to deal with?
Well, I mean, you still have businesses that are either unbanked or underbanked, or, in numerous states, there aren't enough banks to serve the number of licensed marijuana businesses that exist. So you have people having bank accounts, then getting their bank accounts shut down. Existing as a business without a bank account is incredibly difficult. You cannot pay your electricity bill with cash. There are certain vendors you can't pay with cash. There are cash reporting requirements on Form 8300. So it just complicates everything, not to mention the biggest issue being it's a safety risk. If you have a lot of cash sitting around in your business, you are a target for crime. And that is causing a big issue in this industry. So we need more banks to be able to serve this industry. And the only way that's going to happen is if we pass legislation like safe banking. And for me, the industry exists. The federal government has decided to let states regulate. There's talk of federal legalization. There's no reason why our legislators on both sides couldn't agree to pass a bill that allows for banks to bank with this industry and do it without fear of repercussion. or law enforcement for merely offering banking services. So, to me, it doesn't make sense that we shouldn't be passing this legislation. It's very important. And I think what happened the last time when it got removed from this must-pass legislation in the defense spending bill is it was sort of people that we expect to be on our side that are saying, well, I'm not going to support this until I get that. And to me, this is a safety issue. It should be passed, period. It shouldn't matter about what bill we put forth for legalization on the federal level. It shouldn't matter. This is very straightforward legislation that both Republicans and Democrats can support. It will help the business be with regulated monitoring businesses, making sure that they're reporting all their income. I mean, having a cash-based business invites crime, invites criminals, not to mention the logistical challenges. And I'm not saying that businesses that operate in cash are behaving in such a way, but it's just very difficult to have a cash-based business in this day and age. So.
And with the safe banking inquiry where it is, here's an interesting stat. In the 160th Congress, just as an example, just to try to get some legislation being passed, 20 bills out of 5,000 introduced by lawmakers were actually enacted. The slow and, turtle-like movement of Congress to go and do anything to kind of give us any kind of help. And, I want to appreciate those banking institutions that have started to step forward to try to offer, whether it's credit unions or other banks that have been out there that have started to make their way in to offer banking services. Is really wonderful, but it's just not enough, and there's not enough, really, the supply and demand of it to really help out those companies out.
Well, there's enough demand. There's not enough supply.
Well, right.
And unfortunately, too, it's expensive for the bank and for the business customer. And so, ironically, the cost to maintain a marijuana bank account, because there's such high demand and low supply, because in order to bank, the banks have to go through special compliancy programs, et cetera. The cost is exorbitant. And not only that, the IRS loves to disallow the fees that marijuana businesses are paying just to have a bank account, because that's disallowed under 280E, or at least that's the IRS's position. So it's like a double hit for these businesses, unfortunately. To have a bank account, sometimes it's just not even affordable for a marijuana business, a small marijuana business too. And it shouldn't be that way. Marijuana exists. It's legal in a number of states. Banks should be able to serve this industry without fear of reprisals from the federal government.
I also want to make a point, too, when you brought up the level of crime or criminal activities being done towards cannabis businesses. I want to take a story from Politico real quick and just make this point, just to put this across. Now, there's not 50 states we can go and get this information from, but Washington State, for example, they say there have been more than 50 armed robberies of cannabis stores in the first 2 months of 2022. That's it. And that's more than all of 2020 and 2021. So people know these are targets. And they're able to go and do what they want with this here. And, now here's the other thing I want to ask. Before we move along to what I wanted to ask you about when it comes to an FDA announcement that I wanted to bring up on the show. But I thought this part was very important. So the safe banking Act, we know, it's now also, so no more NDAA. We already talked about that. The new thing is, just like you said, you made the mention of how there's a little bit of being a little bit offended. I imagine the same thing can be said about the fact that now the House of Representatives wants to go ahead and put a version of their amendment in the Competes Act, or the China Trade Bill. And it doesn't, sure, Senate support might be there, but it's the same thing over and over. Let's just fit it into another bill.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with putting it or including safe banking language into what I call must-pass legislation or likely to pass legislation. Okay. If that's the only way we get there, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. it's just, and that was what was going to be happening with the defense spending bill as well, but it was removed at the last minute. I don't think, I think there's more likelihood that it passes that way than as a standalone bill. So I think that may be our option right now. And I think I'll take whatever we can get. So I don't know. I haven't looked into the Competes Act, I think it's called, into great detail, but I understand it's sort of a, American manufacturing bill, and it's got those types of things. Hopefully it has bipartisan support. I do not know, but I'm okay with the concept of including safe banking language in must-pass legislation if that's the only way we're going to get it passed.
So just for context, folks, the United States Innovation and Competition Act of 2021, it would direct funding to create a strategic transformer reserve, facilitate domestic manufacturing, and test critical electric grid equipment to reduce vulnerability and increase resiliency in the event of severe damage to the electrical grid. That's the initial part. But where it says China and trade, where the political article I'm taking from says it is, okay, I mean, it's something that could be much more possible to pass. I guess that's the one advantage I see from it. But like you said, without reading the bill, we're not sure what it's doing for it. But we still know safe banking still needs to be offering safe harbor to cannabis companies to be able to go and do good banking and to avoid this criminal activity that's going on. Now, let's get into one other thing, and we're going to follow up into this in the next break. But the FDA, they recently announced they issued warning letters to companies involved in the illegal selling of Delta-8 THC and CBD products in an unprecedented action. The announcement states that, quote, this action is the first time the FDA has issued warning letters for products containing Delta-8 THC. Delta-8 THC has psychoactive and intoxicating effects that may be dangerous to consumers. The FDA has received reports of adverse events experienced by patients who have consumed these products. So talk to me about the pressure. Now, we already know some states have already started to outlaw or ban Delta-8 products, but the pressure now it would put, with or without a cannabis control board, to outlaw the sales of Delta-8, which is still on the market in many states.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that at least 20 states have either restricted or banned the sale of Delta-8. And I always say this, where a product has psychoactive effects or gets you high, expect it to be regulated in some way. And so this shouldn't be unexpected to people in the hemp industry. Delta-8 being a product that can compete with what's being sold from licensed marijuana stores is going to be regulated in some form or fashion. So, you have a number of states that really aren't, don't know what to do, but they know it gets people high. So they're going to come in and they're going to restrict it and ban it. And then there's just a lot of confusion. I mean, a lot of people don't understand the hemp industry, even though it's federally legal, and hemp derivatives are federally legal, it's largely unregulated because the FDA, I mean, it's like a slow, like you say, slow train, not going very fast.
No, not at all.
And we're not getting clarity. We're not getting regulations. And so we haven't created that swim lane for CBD yet, which I think was one of the first priorities. And now we have this industry being developed surrounding Delta-8 and these products being sold pretty much everywhere, like you mentioned, in gas stations everywhere. And there's no oversight as far as their manufacturing, what's in the products. It's just largely unregulated. So safety is a concern, obviously, to many states as well as the federal government. So the FDA issued these warning letters the same way they issued the warning letters to CBD. That's, I guess, limited enforcement, but they're trying to send a message essentially to say, we think these products may not be safe, and we need the public to know this. So they actually put out also, their announcement that Delta-8 THC has serious health risks.
And there's so much more to say about it. We're going to go to commercial break. We're going to explain all this to the audience here because more importantly to me, when we go in the break right now, my point is going to be you have the FDA that they received the hemp bill. It's their job to implement it, to lay out the framework, to lay out the rulings and the regulations. And they have not done it. They have skipped the can down the road, as they always say. And that's my biggest problem. Like, listen, Give me a set of rules and we'll follow it. But that's what I want to bring up after the break is the fact of that. Plus, it's not just Delta-8. We know that the other phytocannabinoids that are being produced for products, synthetically or whatnot, that's coming up down the line after this. If it's not Delta-8, what's the next product that's going to be on shelves? We're going to talk about that more with the partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice at Holland Hart, Rachel Gillette, here on Blunt Business after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
Welcome back to Blunt Business. I'm here with Rachel Gillette, partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice at Holland Hart. And by the way, website for you to go and check out while we're going recording here, hollandhart.com, Holland, HOLLAND, Now, Rachel, more from this from MJBiz, they had an article that spoke about the Delta-8 debate. And they said this, now, quote, in the effort to legalize and regulate hemp-derived CBD, the 2018 Farm Bill stated that any cannabinoid-derived hemp, defined as cannabis containing less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC, was a legal product. So stated that. Yet by specifying Delta-9, the bill's authors unwittingly left over other cannabinoids outside the realm of regulation. Without the specific language detailed in the bill and without the FDA or congressional intervention, should business owners be concerned? Because, there might be some that will obviously put it on the shelf, and at some point they might have to take a hit on the cost because it'll be banned. They can no longer sell it.
Yeah, so the argument being that since Delta-8 is chemically synthesized from CBD isolate, many states and the federal government may consider it to be a controlled substance. But I also think it comes down to, does it make you high? And I think that's where regulators want to step in and regulate. But that's the position that the state of Colorado has taken. They have recently, come out stating that Delta-8 is not lawful. And in fact, people have been charged with a crime for selling it. So that is the risk that people run, whether or not those types of charges will stick in the long run. But it's something that people that are manufacturing and selling these products need to be aware of, that there could be criminal liability in certain states for manufacturing and selling these products if your state has taken a position on Delta-8. And I don't think that this is settled at all. I think there's arguments to support that anything derived from lawful hemp is legal under federal law. And even if it may be chemically synthesized in some respects. So I do respect those arguments on both sides, but I agree with you that, leaving it largely unregulated or leaving it to be an open question with sort of these, enforcement actions that, are akin to sending a letter. I'm curious to know whether these adverse events that have been reported to the FDA are a result of a manufactured product that's manufactured in unsafe conditions, as opposed to like Delta-8 itself. And that's what we don't know, right? Right. It could be that the product is just a bad product and it has nothing to do with the fact that it's Delta-8. It's interesting, but I do think a lot of states are stepping up and trying to provide clarity in the law, whether you agree with it or don't.
Well, it's also,
and I'm sure there's a number of people that don't.
A lot of the issues go in the same way, whether it should just be state regulated or federally regulated. But I've always been the opinion, now this is my opinion only, is that it should be the states that should be going to be able to go and implement and follow with federal oversight and framework. That's it. We don't need federal to jump in. Just lay out the rules, be done with it, let the states handle. But now, without any help from the federal side, the states are just going to go along on their own onus. And, God bless them for taking the initiative and saying, you know what, we need to go and protect our citizens, or we need to go ahead and inform or educate, or let our business owners have the right products that they can have on and go that route. Might as well. If they're not getting, they might as well go and pass the bills themselves. And then, if federal wants to come in and intervene, then that's after the fact. That's like forgiveness before permission, things like that.
Right.
In the article, the MJBiz also goes on to say that while Delta-8's popularity is boosting the bottom lines of hemp farmers and CBD companies, it's causing worries among traditional cannabis cultivators, manufacturers, and retailers, as well as regulators and lawmakers. And one recommendation that was put in that article, I thought this was something to point out, quote, that the federal government really needs to start thinking about ways in which to bring novel and minor cannabinoids into the regulated market in a way that protects consumer safety but also respects the huge burdens that licensed cannabis producers have faced and make sure they're not being cut out, end quote. So would it be wise, Rachel, in your opinion, to have amendments added to legislation like the FDA hemp bill that have yet to be properly implemented?
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what those amendments say. But I do think that there is, there is this concept that many states have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to develop robust regulatory frameworks for the sale of cannabis products that are that get you high, right?
Yep.
So you have this entire industry that has applied for licenses, invested substantial amounts of money, that pay taxes and are strictly regulated, and then all of a sudden.
My name is Preston James. I've been a stock and options trader for 23 years. I used to be an active swing trader, but that all changed once I discovered my Money Press weekly paycheck method. These days, I'm a passive trader hauling in more cash while being able to sleep at night than I ever dreamed possible. I'm passionate about the market and I like to keep it simple. My methods are changing thousands of lives and I'm confident it can change yours. But let the proof do the talking by going to paycheckproof.com. That's paycheckproof.com. You'll see a 7-minute video revealing how my Money Press method grew a $54,000 account to $174,000 in less than 9 months. That works out to 5.8% per week. You'll see the proof right inside my real brokerage account. This isn't about overnight riches, but once you discover this for yourself, you can start on this same path overnight. You're 7 minutes away from changing everything you thought you knew about trading and investing. Go to paycheckproof.com. That's paycheckproof.com.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.
People come in and start selling products that have a similar psychoactive effect at gas stations and without regulation. And I think rightly so. We see pushback from the industry itself, who obviously the industry is pro cannabis, but they're not pro people taking their business, right? Because they have to follow a strict set of rules. Yeah. So I think the line in my mind is always, does it get you high? And I think that may be similarly a line in many legislators' minds too. If it's a product that has psychoactive effects, then perhaps it should fall into that bucket of strictly regulated, as opposed to a product that has no THC, like a CBD lotion or balm or other CBD product or hemp-derived product. So I can understand why the industry is concerned about Delta-8. I certainly can. But there has to be room for the hemp industry. And there has to be a way that the hemp industry can succeed, too.
And it's most important that there are forward-leaning companies out there that, while there are compliance barriers and standards that have been put in place by cannabis control boards, that might be just the bare minimum in some cases. They might not all be Colorado or California. But the thing is that There are a lot of companies that have been doing the right things, and also organizations, for that matter, that have tried to do the right thing to make sure that all companies stay above compliance and are doing the proper, the greater good for companies, and not put out products that are going to be harmful or damaging. They might have the psychoactive effects, but at least they're going to be done pure, and they're going to be done, and they're going to be processed correctly. They're not going to have any bad effects towards those products.
Right.
Now,
yeah. I mean, I agree with you. There are a lot of hemp companies that are absolutely doing the right thing, or their research. And I'm certainly not saying that there isn't a space for hemp and hemp-derived products that have certain psychoactive effects. It's just that, we're trying to get to the right place.
Because
and there's
cannabis
not a lot
is
of
so regulated, and hemp is, and that's the whole difference, is that the regulations are, the rules are different for both industries. We both support cannabis and hemp, period.
Right.
But, the cannabis and hemp need to be regulated. They should have some uniform regulations in some way, shape, or form.
Right. And that's the problem, is you have it largely unregulated. But there are certain states where they're stepping up, and there is regulation. I mean, there is a permit for manufacturing of hemp products in Colorado. There are a number of states that have permitting process for manufacturing and sales of hemp products and hemp derivative products. That I think is happening on a state by state basis. Maybe it's not happening fast enough for people. And then obviously the hemp industry and the cannabis industry itself is just so innovative, and things, like you say, people are creating new products, new derivative products all the time. And so the regulations take a lot of time to catch up with these new products, because the industry is so innovative. But I think everybody's interest in this industry, be it hemp, cannabis, is to make sure that consumers are safe, that people can make a living and they can succeed. Right. Yep. I think everybody has those interests, and there's a way to get there. It's just, it's going to take some time. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's probably more time than a lot of people have.
They take too much time anyway. Let's go to another break. I'm here with Rachel Gillette, partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice at Holland Hart here on Blunt Business. Back after this.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
Welcome back. I'm here with Rachel Gillette, partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice at Holland Hart. Website is hollandhart.com, HOLLANDHART.com. Now, when we started the show and I started talking to you about the Delta-8 announcement by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, they mentioned they had issued warning letters, and that they said they also had received, reports. And so they said that they actually had received 104 reports of adverse events in patients who consumed Delta-8 THC between December 1st, 2020 and February 28, 2022. National Poison Control Center received 2,362 exposure cases of Delta-8 THC products between January 1st, the Delta-8 THC product code that was added to the database, and February 28, 2022. So a year and a month's time. So they have this information, but yet, has the FDA, to your knowledge, or has anybody had a chance to see anything of transparency in terms of the products or formulations, of what the reports are saying, or what was being said that the reports found about which products were at risk, or what was in those products? Was there anything like that from the producer standpoint that was presented by the FDA to offer some transparency at all?
That's something we could FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request.
Yeah.
I'm imagining you could get that information, except you won't get it for 2 years. So it might just be completely irrelevant by the time you get it. But I do think we could potentially get that information. But I agree with you. That is important, because, here's the problem, is that because it's largely unregulated, because any 14, 16-year-old can walk into a gas station and potentially buy a Delta-8 product, And people who buy products from gas stations don't expect those products to get them high, right?
Yep.
Because it's not like you're going into a liquor store and there's age verification, or you're going into a cannabis business and there's age verification. There's a strict set of rules of who should be consuming these products and who shouldn't. And so that's what we have with Delta-8. We have these products being sold all over the place with no age restrictions, and we don't really have lots of rules as far as the manufacturer of the product. We don't really know. So, it could be the issues of adverse events could be a result of a lot of different things, not necessarily the cannabis derivative itself. It could be a result of, have you ever gotten high when you didn't know you were going to get high? I mean, that could be an adverse event for a lot of people. What's happening to me? I don't know what's wrong with me. That doesn't necessarily mean people are at risk, but it's something that's unexpected and probably not enjoyable and could be adverse for them.
Right. And I just want to make the point. Okay, so if these the Poison Control Center got this information, the FDA got these reports, there is, remember, all these companies, we're not judging, we're not trying to blame, I'm not putting any kind of negativity towards all of you, whichever you are. But the point is, the FDA's put a bullseye on the industry here because of what they've done, because of the fact that now you have this information that sounds damaging. Okay, it doesn't sound good, but there's nothing, like Rachel said, without waiting a couple of years on Freedom of Information Act request to find out any information behind this, the FDA could just go ahead and continue to put out warnings like this in the future.
And the risk that comes along with this, because we want people to be responsible manufacturers and sellers of products, right? So maybe there should be an age verification. We shouldn't market towards children. You shouldn't have cartoon characters. I mean, the same rules that apply really in the cannabis space. Maybe, selling products that have, when it comes to the CBD, I always say maybe not having any THC in the product at all is advisable. It depends on your level of risk tolerance versus risk aversion. Yeah. But the risk that we're running here as an industry is the recriminalizing of these products, right? Because you have people saying, adverse events and safety issues and everything else, and all of a sudden states pass laws that are criminalizing the sale of Delta-8 as opposed to regulating the sale of Delta-8 or creating rules like age limitations, etc. So that has happened in a number of states. So we don't want to go back to prohibition, remember, so that the onus is on all of us in the industry to make sure that we're selling safe products. They're being manufactured in a safe way. But it just takes sort of a few major missteps in an industry to go back to prohibition. So I think that's something the hemp industry needs to really think about when it comes to the types of products they manufacture and sell.
But that would also be then communicating with the states to say, listen, start implementing age verification. Let's just put it in there. We can't, there has to be some proactive measures done by the industry itself to avoid this FDA intervention again. Like, this is just an announcement, just a warning. But they haven't enacted anything. They have not taken actions yet. But the warning should be a shot that says, hey, put your rabbit ears up and just realize this is serious. And because we haven't gotten the implementation, any framework or regulations put in play, but yet we can get this kind of information, that is just bad press. This is bad publicity that the industry does not need at all. This is what's more important upon all the companies here collectively to realize there's a risk here. I mean, that's what we have right now. We have to keep that in mind. There's a lot more that can be talked about it, but we'll table that for now. So we talked earlier about safe banking. I want to get back to this one more time. Okay, so Marijuana Moment recently reported that nearly a quarter of the members of the U.S. Senate are joining together to call on congressional leaders to ensure that banking provisions are enacted into law as part of a large-scale manufacturing bill. We talked about there's 24 senators. 19 Democrats, 5 Republicans, that show the support for the Safe Banking Act. And we know that they want to try to implement it. We talked about it before the break about putting it into the America Competes Act. And there's a bicameral conference committee that's supposed to be meeting about this. And noting that cannabis making legislation has passed the House 6 times at this point, including as a standalone bill, quote, garnering the support of more than 3/4 of the chamber and a majority of the members of each party, the bipartisan group of senators has said that getting the reform enacted into law has demonstrated, quote, broad support. So when you have clients coming to you and say, listen, what are we going to, is there any kind of guidance, or if you feel like there's any kind of hope or any kind of, expectations that eventually safe banking, as we all know, could be passed before the CAOA would be passed. And even when they tried to put the CAOA passed, they got it to the House, and the Senate has so far not passed it, but it's likely not expected to. Even if $40 million was spent on lobbying to get the bill passed, or the MORE Act as well, right? So if that's not coming in, do you think this level of support means something tangible could happen? Do you feel like, are there any expectations that any of your clients or any people out there should expect to have?
Well, I will say this. I think the banking industry, in addition to cannabis industry, want this legislation. Because I think the banking industry, a lot of these larger banks see this industry as a new customer. And they just are not willing to take the risk of setting up a compliancy program and banking this industry until there is clear guidance and law passed at the federal level that says that they are not going to be at risk for simply offering their services to the cannabis industry. So I can't remember your question, but I think it was, is it likely to pass or something like that?
Well, do you feel like any expectations that, say, your clients would have, or if other people would have out there, do you feel like they're warranted, or do you feel like, do we kind of feel cynical that we can't expect anything to be passed right away, that banking relief is not on the horizon, as it was not coming up in the next year or two?
I think I have less faith that it will pass as a standalone bill than I do that it will pass in some must-pass legislation, which is why it keeps being added to such legislation. So I do think, look, I'm an internal optimist, so I want to think that this will pass because I think it's something that is important, and I think it, I don't know that a lot of our legislators understand how many jobs are created in this industry, how many people make their living from the cannabis industry. The coal industry is dwarfed by the size of the cannabis industry. This is an important industry, and we should be able to have banking. And the highest priority in my mind for passing this legislation is the safety of employees and business owners that are in this space. It's not going away. Lives are at risk in my view. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but as you can see from the statistics in Washington of the 22 armed robberies or 50 armed?
In Washington,
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that is a huge safety concern. And we don't want these businesses to be targets of criminals or people that are robbing them. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of security, but at the same time, obviously people know that there's a lot of cash in this industry, and there shouldn't be. I mean, they should have access to banking.
Right. So we talked extensively about banking regulation. I want to just get some breaking news as we do this as well, because it's just dropped in. I just want to make this report real quick that there's a new study that actually just came out that's demonstrating CBD's strong safety profile, and they're showing observational data on long-term consumption of oral CBD shows no correlation to safety issues raised by the FDA. So there's a study that came out, and it's showing that with the results, daily consumption across a range of typical retail products and serving sizes is not associated with elevated liver tests, low testosterone levels, or daytime drowsiness. And hemp and CBD industries now are calling and urging the FDA to take steps to regulate CBD now, and calling on Congress to act if FDA continues to delay. And there's a number of companies that are behind this. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable just put out this press release. So, at least, there are a lot of good companies out there that are trying to get the push and say, listen, while we're waiting for banking, while we're waiting for relief at other ends, regulation is important. FDA, please put the implementations now in place. Congress, step in if necessary. Let's just get it done. And I can appreciate that just coming across the pipe. Just want to put that out there to the audience.
Well, the other thing I want to add too is that type of study is important, because what we don't want the FDA to do is fear-based regulation, right? Regulation out of fear, not understanding the science and not understanding the facts, right? Yeah. So these types of studies are very important. And, it's something that maybe I already knew, but now you can put the data in front of the FDA, and hopefully that will lend itself to a more rationally based, science-based regulation as opposed to fear-based regulation. Yep. So that's what we want to have. So that's good. I'm
going to have to reach out to the Hemp Roundtable and get some more commentary on this, because they put a pretty expansive press release on it. And I like the fact they're trying to put this out there, and it's just one organization that's trying to go ahead and say, listen, we want to do this right, and we want to avoid issues like, well, the FDA just put that out there on us, because it's trying to create crisis management. We should not be on the defensive. We should be on the offensive continuously as an industry. That's the way it's going to win. I mean, it comes down to that. So again, I'm in here with Rachel Gillette, who is a partner and lead of the Cannabis Practice at Holland Hart. Really appreciate you taking time to go and join us again, Rachel. And real quickly, for those that want to go and reach out to you and connect with you or your team, should they would need legal services, how can they go ahead and do that?
They can send me an email, or they can contact me through our website at Holland and Hart. If you just look up my name at the Holland and Hart website, they can get a hold of me, and then they can call me as well. My number is 303-295-8241.
HollandHart.com, HollandHart.com is the website. Rachel, thanks again for being on with us. Really glad to have you on, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in the Blunt Business, as you always do. We'll talk to you next time. The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Verizon. Get a Verizon Business Unlimited plan from the network businesses rely on. Hey, Monica, with 5G Ultra Wideband in many more cities, you get up to 10 times the speed at no extra cost.
Hello, downloads in no time.
Plus, unlimited premium data and hotspot data to keep the signal flowing and your teams going. Come in or book an appointment with a Verizon business expert to find the right plan for your team. 5G Ultra Wideband available in over 1,700 cities with Business Unlimited Pro 2.0 smartphone plan. Speed comparison is to median Verizon 4G LTE speeds. Download speeds may vary depending upon network and coverage conditions and content optimization for 5G Ultra Wideband.
Target has Laundry Day covered because they offer a great selection of concentrated Tide Pods to help with all your laundry needs. Tide Pods clean, freshen, and help rejuvenate your clothes with odor fighters and stain removers. Did you know Tide Pods clean better than the leading liquid bargain detergent? Tide Pods are powerful enough to make your whites white and your brights bright, even in cold water. Just toss in 1 Tide Pod for small loads, 2 for medium, 3 for large. It's that easy. For great value and convenient pickup options, get Tide Pods today at Target.